But first of all, let's start with a few facts about the UK social enterprise sector and its dynamism. In the not-for-profit, the wider not-for-profit sector, there are around 200,000 registered charities and many, many tens of thousands more that aren't registered. So in total, there's probably 900,000 or so organizations in the charitable sector. And these charities have a turnover or an income of around £52 billion each year, which is about 3.5% of GNP. And they employ 1.6 million people, which is about 6% of the economic sector workforce. And in addition, they have about 1.6 million trustees. There are so many of them. And 20 million volunteers. Now in China, you've had millions of volunteers, literally 1 million for the Olympic Games and other hundreds of thousands elsewhere around the country. We have 20 million volunteers in the UK on a regular basis from a population of 60 million. So a third of our population is regularly involved in volunteering in one way or another. Our social enterprise sector, which is what we're here to talk about today, has over 62,000 social enterprises, and they have an annual revenue of about £27 billion. And that's 1% of GDP. And about 90% of them are based in urban areas, with 1 in 5 having an annual turnover of over £1 million. But generally, they're predominantly small scale still. Around 50% have less than 10 employees, and only 2% have over 250 employees. But that's still well over 1,000 social enterprises. And they can be found in every part of the UK economy and deliver lots of services on behalf of local or national government and compete with the private sector to win those contracts. So, why has the UK developed such a dynamic civil society sector and such a large social enterprise sector? Well, we've got a long history of philanthropy and charity in the UK, but a key point was in the 1970s with the oil crisis that triggered the government to think about how much money they were spending on the model of welfare support. And the Conservative government from the end of the 1970s encouraged the civil society sector to be much more engaged with government, and they wanted to professionalize this relationship to make the third sector more professional and be able to provide services for government. From this time on, the civil society sector and the wider third sector was welcomed into dialogue with the government and to have these sorts of contractual relationships. And from 1997, New Labour under Tony Blair introduced their vision of the third way. And instead of emphasizing the business relationship and the professionalization of these organizations, they looked at partnership. And they saw it was essential for the third sector and government to work together to improve public service, create active communities, promote social inclusion, and strengthen social cohesion. And this was the real start of the government's support for the sector, which continues to this day. So over the last 12 years, there's been continuous development of government policy towards the third sector and social enterprise. And I think one of the key things, or the key points that showed how serious the government was about social enterprise and partnering with the third sector was the repositioning of the Office of Civil Society into the Cabinet Office, which in effect sent the message that civil society became central in the heart of government rather than being in one of the government departments. So that remains in the Cabinet Office today, and at least 7 other government departments now work and engage with the social enterprise sector. Now, this support for the social enterprise sector shows how the focus has moved from public-private partnerships before the turn of the century, so 1990s and early 2000, and is now looking very much at government to third sector, government to social enterprise to move this forward in the UK. The cost efficiency savings have been clearly seen, and there's a concerted effort to support and develop the sector in the UK. And it was quite amusing or quite funny at the time of the election this year when each of the 3 parties were trying to be the best friend to the social enterprise sector and putting it in their manifestos and saying, this is what we can do for the sector. They are a really important part of the country.